So
Yeah, now we come to another very popular subject. Many of you have Muslims who are friends. Maybe they're in your family, maybe they are your workmates, could be your classmates in school, and they're terrific people. Well, I find my favorite people are Muslims. And then you hear in the news where there are people like Arafat, Yasser Arafat. He was famous for saying one thing in English to the Western media, and then the evening going back to Ramadan saying something completely different in Arabic. And this was brought up many, many times, how that he would say one thing in English and a completely different thing in Arabic, and they would be contradictory. People say, well, isn't this lying? Are you not telling us the truth? The word that is very popular that people have used to explain this is Taqiyya. What I've asked Lloyd to come and unpack is this idea of Taqiyya, but he's going to throw that word out. He doesn't like that word. That's not really the word we should be using. There's something that is actually much more deeper and more important. I'm going to let him introduce the word. I've got it written down here, so I know where he's going to go with this. And he gave me an overview, and I was quite intrigued with what he now has found. But it's not that Lloyd's finding something off the top of his head. He's actually dug down, and he's taken years to go through and just unpack these manuals, the Reliance of the Travel, the Hidayah manuals, to see what they say about obligatory lying. And it is obligatory lying, and that's why we're calling it this. On this subject, obligatory lying, we have found it with people, with friends. They say one thing one day and then say something completely the next day, and you're kind of astounded why. And yet you're going to say that this is actually obliged of Muslims to do. This is obligatory for them. So help us with this.
unfortunately, that is true. So yeah, thanks, Jay. Good to be back. So today I want to introduce a topic, and I do want to state for everyone that I provide every single source that I use. Jay and I have made available to you to download and read for yourself. So anyone can go through those sources and check I give away literally all of my sources. I don't keep them secret. I show them on the screen and I provide the links for you to download them all. So please verify everything I say for yourself.
Yeah, if you look at the description box right here at the bottom, you'll see right the very first thing, the very first line, are his archive of material. Now, when you open it up, read where it says read the rest. You need to open up the entire window, and there is line after line after line of all these documents that he's quoting, including Reliance of the Travel, including the Hidayah, all the manuals, plus many other PDFs and even entire books that you can do. And thanks to you, Lloyd, for providing all this wealth of material that we can use.
You're welcome. Yeah, I have over 1,400 academic documents and books in my archive. I index them using professional search software and search it that way. However, yeah, as Jay said, go and hit the read more. Look through everything that you need is there. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. Now, let me share my screen and let me do a section on obligatory lying in Islam. So I'm going to book R, and I'm looking at chapter R 8.0. This is the contents page, and you'll see it says lying, chapter R 8.0. And do you have any comment before I continue, Jay?
No, I mean, this is quite, they're not even trying to hide this. This is something that's right out in the open. They're calling it as it is. And right underneath, permissible lying, R 8.2.
Have a look at this one, Jay.
Obligatory lying, R 8.2. Okay, it just gets better and better. Go ahead, let's see what it has to say.
Now, they speak of circumventing those forbidding the permissible. So, it is permissible to spread Islam. It is permissible to make Allah dominant. It is permissible to make Islam dominant. Therefore, you must circumvent those forbidding the permissible. Remember, because they must command the right and they must forbid the wrong. The right is permissible and the wrong is forbidden. They must forbid that. You and I, Jay, right now, we are doing wrong, and they must forbid the wrong. Therefore, they must circumvent us. They must circumvent those forbidding the permissible, which is Islam. So we must be circumvented through obligatory lying. And notice it even states here, giving a misleading impression, which is another word for lying. So I will continue here with this. And Right. But by the way, I've mentioned slander multiple times. It says slander in section R 2.2, which is riba, means to mention anything concerning a person that he would dislike. In Western law, slander is to lie about someone and damage their character, their income, to damage their reputation by lying about them. In Islam, it means to say anything that they would dislike, even if it is true. Right? So the truth in Islam can be slander if they wouldn't like it. So to say Muhammad did certain things which are true but would be unpalatable for them, that is slander. That's a crime in Islam. Just so by the way, I'm not going to spend a great deal of time, so let me... Okay, so here we have this chapter, section R 8.2. In the book, it is page 744. In the PDF, it is page 762. Please use the PDF references. Those are more convenient, page 762. The chapter is called Permissible Lying. The Prophet, that would be Muhammad, I assume, said, "He who settles disagreements between people to bring about good, good being the good as defined by the Sharia, or says something commendable, is not a liar." Now, this is in a chapter on permissible lying. So if you settle a disagreement, so ask yourself this question. You and a Muslim are disagreeing in the comments about the nature of Jesus. You are disagreeing about a point of Islamic theology or Islamic law. And he wants to settle this disagreement and bring about peace, bring about harmony. So he can lie to you, because settling a disagreement through lying, well, if it's commendable, and it is not a lie. And thus, one who settles disagreements is not a liar. So this is the out. Remember, I said every single rule in Islam every single Sharia law has its escape clause, has its loophole, has its exception, every single one. Now, we did not hear Muhammad permit untruth. So Muhammad did not permit lies except for three things: war and settling disagreements. Now, Islam is permanently at war because jihad is permanent until the day of resurrection, but that's a story for another day. However, look at settling disagreements. Do you disagree with Shabir Ali about the nature of God and Jesus, for argument's sake?
I disagree, but I keep truthful to everything that I say about our disagreement.
Well,
I would
you
never
disagree
lie.
with him. He disagrees with you. Therefore, it is legal for him to lie to you.
Yeah.
Untruth is permitted in the case of settling disagreements. This is an explicit statement. Sorry?
There are many examples of this at Speaker's Corner. We get this almost weekly. Huttoon's getting it now. When I was there over the 25 years, I was astounded how many times Muslims would just say something off the top of the head. I mean, I remember, well, let me give you an example. Adnan Rashid, I was doing a debate with him at Speaker's Corner, and he said, we have 100,000 manuscripts, original manuscripts from the time of Uthman. That's from 652. I have one in my own house. I have one in my own house from Uthman. It's on camera. You can see him say it.
I remember that talk.
After, astounded he would say that. Afterwards, he was very clear that he doesn't have one. And he just said this because the cameras were on him. He wanted to one-upmanship. It was his way of winning the argument, regardless of whether he could support it.
One who tries to bring about good or says something commendable is not a liar. Lying for Allah is not a lie.
We were astounded that he would make something this crass, and yet now I see where it's coming from.
Now notice,
like this is perfectly
the imams,
under his viewpoint.
It is. It's not only legal, it is obligatory. Notice it states here, this is an explicit statement that lying is permissible for a given interest. Now, you can ignore this sometimes, because they will cancel that later on as we go. Lying is obligatory. Sorry, lying is permissible for a given interest, right? And scholars have established criteria defining what types of lying are lawful. We're going to go into that. Speaking is a means to achieve objectives, you see? Ask Adnan Rashid. Speaking is a means to achieve an objective, and he wanted to win the argument. He wanted to settle the disagreement and be victorious. Now notice it states here, when it is possible to achieve such an aim by lying, but not by telling the truth, it is permissible to lie, if attaining the goal is permissible. So, to make Islam victorious, to make sure that Islam and Allah are victorious and Islam is not impugned, Allah is not impugned, Muhammad is not impugned, understand again, If it is possible to achieve such an aim by lying, but not by telling the truth, it is permissible to lie if attaining the goal is permissible. It is always permissible to spread Islam. It is always permissible to make sure that Islam is victorious. I.e., when the purpose of lying is to circumvent someone who is preventing one from doing something permissible, right? It is permissible to lie, and it is obligatory to lie if the goal is obligatory. Does that clarify, Jay?
Now, this makes perfect sense now that you're bringing and showing me where the support is for all this.
Yeah, I will continue. So understand, lying in Islam is not only permissible, it is obligatory. It is not optional, right? And Islam has a very sophisticated arsenal of lies. It has a very sophisticated doctrine of lies.
Okay. The example they give, though, look at the example they give. That would be also supported in our context, where you're trying to hide somebody from the enemy, and therefore you lie to the enemy so that you don't give away their position. That is quite normal in the context of war, and we see examples of that in all of our wars, or in the context of where you are controlled by an evil power.
Correct. However, that they utilize that example of, call it quote unquote Taqiyya, because they can morally justify that. Of course, this acts as shall we call it, a thought terminating cliche. Once they say the word, you stop thinking. You don't look further. You don't realize, well, Eskimos have what, 20 words for snow? Islam has 20 words for lying. You looked at number 1, you ignored the other 19, to coin a metaphor, right? So understand, Taqiyya is a very minor part, and there are actually two kinds of Taqiyya. There's Taqiyya, where you would do so to save a life, yours or others, granted. That is one form of Taqiyya. The other form of Taqiyya is for the purposes of warfare, which is tactical deceit for the purposes of spreading Islam. Tactical deceit for the purposes of spreading Islam. Now, notice what it says here in the Reliance further. It is not unlawful to lie when any of these aims can only be attained through lying. However, they do tell us, look, it is religiously more precautionary to employ words that give a misleading impression. In other words, be deceitful. They call that tawriya, right? They will call that tawriya. That's your tawriya that they, and look, there's multiple different kinds. Let me just type this up here. This is one type. There will be others. There's multiple types. I'm not going to go into this now, okay? But tawriya, there you go, right? That's just one form of that. Let's continue. So again, to repeat, it is not unlawful to lie when any of these aims can only be attained through lying. However, when you're not overtly, blatantly lying, employ words that give a misleading impression. In other words, just lie, but not so obviously, right? Let's continue. Finally, the outward purport of the words deceives the hearer. If one merely lies without intending anything else, it is not unlawful. So if your aim is just to deceive the hearer, okay, and you lie without intending, okay, well, whatever. Notice the outward purport of the words deceives the hearer. You are intentionally deceiving. Your intention is to deceive, and you are trained, you are taught to apply this. And one should compare the bad consequences entailed by lying to those entailed by telling the truth. And if the consequences of telling the truth are more damaging, one is entitled to lie. And yes, okay, so they do say here very nicely within strictness, okay, is to forego lying in every case where it is not legally obligatory. So in other words, when it's legally obligatory, it is legally obligatory to lie. I'll pause this here and I'll go to a different set of notes. But do you have any comments before I continue, Jay?
No, I mean, these, in some ways, I can understand how Muslims could sidestep it and say this is very normal. This is, if you're in the war context of war, the Dal al-Had, then these are, you would understand these, Mr. Smith or Lloyd, that we have to do this. You do it as well in the context of behind enemy lines, which we are when we come to the West. So they would probably sidestep some of these doing that. But when you see that it's so blatant in the cases that we've had at Speaker's Corner or in discussions on the internet, when you see blatant lying, and there's been case after case that in just the last few months where David Wood and certainly Hatun Tosh have shown blatant lying and they've come back the next day and say you can't even defend what you just said yesterday, that now makes support. That's now I understand where they're coming, where it's coming from, and this seems to, under the context of achieve an objective, in this case, to win the argument.
Correct. So I'm going to go to two different sources. So I'm going to go to a book called the Ihya Ulum al-Din. So let me just bring this up. Okay. So that everyone has an idea. I'm going to go to the Ihya Ulum al-Din. It will be spelled in different ways, okay? So understand it's going to be D-E-N, or whatever the case might be. This book is written by Imam al-Ghazali, who is considered the most senior, the most important scholar in Islam after Muhammad himself. He sits even above the four scholars who developed the schools of fiqh, right? He is the hujjah, the proof of Islam. This book is considered so important to Islam that they do state, even Nawawi says it, they do state that if the Quran had to disappear, they could replace it from the Ihya Ulum al-Din because it is so detailed and comprehensive in terms of its Islamic theology, right? And the Reliance refers to the Ihya Ulum al-Din as the best instructional manual on the topic of obligatory lying. So notice they say here very nicely with some nice euphemisms, false speaking is permissible in some cases. Well, false speaking is permissible. Lying is permitted. Sometimes false speaking becomes compulsory. Remember, they always say, well, you shouldn't really, but hey, it's compulsory. You can't do it, it's wrong, but you can, and if you do it, it's a punishment for you, but if you do it, there's no punishment. I've said before, over and over, Islam contradicts itself in the Sharia constantly. I said it in the second episode, and you're seeing it. Sometimes false speaking, lying, becomes compulsory. And notice, false speaking is better than speaking the truth. So in some cases, lying is better than speaking the truth. Now, I need to say here that Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. God is Logos. Logos is the truth. Logos is logical. Logos is non-contradictory. Logos is the spoken word of truth. It's living your life truthfully. Islam not only makes lying permissible, it makes it obligatory.
Yeah, I just to be careful though, he's going to give some context of what he means, and this is not all in all cases. There has to be a certain criteria for when false speaking is better than truth.
Lying lies between non-Muslims and Muslims, as well as Muslims and Muslims. So unfortunately, are all of the people doing this geniuses in the Sharia? Are they all applying it perfectly? And that's a question to be asked. So notice, to compromise between two parties, false speaking is lawful. To compromise between two parties. Now, if you are in a debate with, John Q. Muslim, to compromise, he may lie to you because false speaking is lawful. The Prophet did not allow false speaking except in 3 cases to bring a compromise between two parties. Now, if you're having a debate with a Muslim debater and he's trying to bring a compromise, or you're having an argument at Speaker's Corner, or you're having an argument in the comment section on YouTube, on Facebook, and he wants to bring a compromise, he may lie to you. Notice, he who settles disputes between two parties is not a liar, according to Muhammad, the Prophet said. He who settles disputes between two parties, he who lies to you to settle a dispute is not a liar. Right? The lie which he speaks in war is not recorded, as war is a strategy. Islam is at war, so if they lie to you for that purpose, it's not a lie. It's not recorded as a lie. Allah does not see it as a lie. And notice, again, they stress this point. Okay? Can you read the bit in green for me, please? Just the bit in green. I can't maximize it more than that.
The lie which is spoken to settle the matters between two contending parties is not written. The lie which is spoken to settle the matter between two contending parties is not written.
They write that twice.
Why?
They repeat it because it's so important.
Okay, or is that just a misprint? That's kind of odd.
Well, but notice this is the 4th repetition of it. They've repeated it over and over in different ways. So when you are contending with another Muslim in the comment section, when you're contending on the debate stage, when you're contending at Speaker's Corner, the lie which is spoken to settle the matter is not written. Allah does not record that lie because Allah does not consider it a lie, because you have made Islam victorious. You've lied for the benefit of Islam. Therefore, it is not a lie. There is no sin in that falsehood which benefits a Muslim or removes a harm from him. Now, a harm could be the cause of doubt. For instance, remember, we're not talking physical harm. Someone's going to hurt him physically. Someone's going to take his life. No, a harm could be introducing doubt, fitna, causing doubt. So understand what. So notice there is no sin in the lie which benefits a Muslim. That's one case, or removes a harm. If it benefits a Muslim, it says here that Muslim may lie. And notice it also says here to disclose an obscene act is also an obscene act. So every man should save his life, his property, and his honor, taking recourse to lies, to falsehood. So if we say, and I say this without trying to offend Muslims, we do not hate Muslims. Please understand this. We are talking about the ideology of Islam and the rules within the Sharia. If we say that Muhammad married a minor child and Muhammad had sexual intercourse with a minor child, to Muslims, this is considered obscene. It is an obscene act. And us disclosing this is an obscene act. They must defend the honor of Muhammad, as we discussed previously in the Sab al-Rasul. Right? So to disclose an obscene act is an obscene act. So every man should save his life, property, and his honor by lying. So if a Muslim needs to protect his honor, he may lie. Is the Muslim losing the argument? Well, he can lie. He needs to save his honor. If inquiry is made to you about a secret thing of your brother Muslim, you can deny it to preserve his honor. A Muslim can lie for the benefit of another Muslim. And if harm is caused more than benefit in case of speaking the truth, it may be avoided. If the truth is going to be harmful, then you should lie instead. Uttering a dual word.
Can I stop there real quickly?
Yeah?
Go back to that
Please.
one, that example of Muhammad
Please.
marrying Aisha. This is a very common place where you see this coming out. Now, to be fair, let's be fair. Most of the Muslims that I know, when I get into a discussion about Aisha, they do not have a problem with Muhammad marrying Aisha. They don't have a problem at all. They know we have a problem with it. They know that today in the 21st century, there's a problem with it. They know that this is not acceptable anywhere in the world except the Muslim world. That is the bind they're in. So you can see there's a cognitive dissonance. How are they going to support this? How are they going to defend it? Here's where the lying comes in. And what they do, rather than say, well, I accept it because it is perfectly acceptable in the 7th century. The parents gave her to him, and going on and trying to explain it that way, they pretty much say, either you got your sources wrong, or this never happened, or they usually put the blame on Mary and say that Mary also married Joseph when she was just a child. Joseph married her. And they try to deflect it over back onto Mary. What's going on here, though, obviously, is this cognitive dissonance. And you can see where they are now, even in their responses, they are lying. They know they are lying. They know that this is not right for today.
Of course, they are also using a dual word, because Muhammad is the example for all mankind for all time, and Joseph was not the example for all mankind for all time. And also, the same story is part and parcel of the Islamic literature. It's okay in Islam. Why is it not okay in Christianity?
And they know that, and they're aware of that. That's why they have to lie. And that's where lying comes in. They tried their best not to make sure that you don't bring up these references in the hadith, especially in Al-Bukhari, which stipulate exactly what happened. Yeah. So this is a good case in point where you will hear this line coming out.
Yeah. And uttering a dual word saves himself from falsehood. So dual meanings may be spoken in case of a crisis, well, a very broadly undefined crisis. See, uttering a dual word saves him from falsehoods. In other words, uttering ambiguous statements, making statements that are deceptive. Right? That can
I did not have sex with Monica Lewinsky.
Right, I understand. So tell you what, I will pause here. I'll move over to another source, but hopefully I've now made it clear that lying is permissible. Lying is in fact obligatory within Islam. Hopefully we've made that clear. I'm going to jump to another source now. And of course, a lie is permitted. If the truth would lead to anything prohibited that is worse than lying, then it is permissible. This is Ghazali. Right? The 40 Principles of the Religion, an adapted summary of Ihya Ulumuddin. Of course, a lie is permitted. And let me continue. These are some of the doctrines of deceit. I'm not going to go into this, but the main one is Hiyal, which translates as contortion, contrivance, device, subterfuge. It is legalistic trickery in Islamic jurisprudence. It allows the breaking of oaths, promises, contracts, and the breaking of Sharia law. It's on the bottom. This is Hiyal.
So this is taken. Want us to use, not Taqiyya.
Correct. Taqiyya is a minor subset of lying. There are two types of taqiyya, but it's very minor. The main form of lying, the practice that drives everything else, is hiyal.
Okay, are you all listening to this? Where he's now introducing a brand new word. We said at the very beginning of this video that he prefers, and this makes sense now because you're going to go and unpack this word for us.
Yeah. So again, remember, it allows the breaking of oaths, promises, contracts, and Sharia law. That's why I said every single Sharia law has its out, has its exception. So you can break every law. So hiyal is legal trickery. It is legalistic trickery in Islamic jurisprudence. Contortion means something twisted, as in position or meaning. So twisting the meaning. We just saw the dual meaning, right? Twisting the meaning, creating a false perception. Contrivance, a plan or a scheme. Allah is a schemer. Allah is a makkar, a liar. Expedient, conducive to advantage or interest. Anything that benefits a Muslim entails lying. It makes lying legal and obligatory. Expedient is conducive to advantage as opposed to being right. Device, a plan or scheme for effecting a purpose, a crafty scheme, a trick. How can we trick you? And subterfuge, an artifice or expedient used to evade a rule, escape a consequence, or to hide something. Understand, these are the connotations of the words that describe hiyal. This is taken from the Encyclopedia of Islam, looking at hiyal and then simply going to the dictionary and saying, okay, well, these are the words associated with hiyal. All of them have a negative connotation. Now, to continue, notice hiyal falls under tactics, military tactics. Notice it falls under harb, war. Hiyal is a tactic of war. Harb is war. And in military science, the plural form adab is synonym of hiyal, stratagems in war. Hiyal is a warfare stratagem. Islam is always at war. However, adab al-jaddal, in theology and law, a method of debating in which we discuss questions that were controversial. Now, when Muslims always tell you, let's have a debate. Why don't you debate? Because Muslims have a very specific form of debate based on rhetoric, but also based on this adab al-jaddal. Adab al-jaddal is a form of debating which is not a matter of finding the truth, but of winning. They say here very nicely, euphemistically, convincing the opponent. Okay? What few people know is that the schools of fiqh, right? The schools of jurisprudence. People say madhabs. They use them interchangeably. Fiqh, madhab. Schools of fiqh, the madhabs. Madhab does not mean jurisprudence. Madhab means school of persuasion. These people were the best at utilizing hiyal to convince people, not of the truth, but of convincing them that their ideas are the best. So it is not a matter of finding the truth, but of convincing the opponent. So their form of debate is a form of utilizing rhetoric and sophistry. So this is a combination of rhetoric and sophistry. It falls under a term called balaga, and then you've got a form called the ilm al-badi, right? And then adab al-jaddal falls under that as the third order. So this is their form of debate. It is a form designed to deceive, to trick. A form designed not to find truth, but just to use deception to win. Hiyal, artifices, stratagems, the means of evading a thing. Well, that's why they cannot give you a straight answer. They're evasive. They're tricks. In law, this is circumventions of the law. In other words, how to break the law. Circumventions of the law. Legal devices, the use of legal means for extra-legal ends. Extra-legal is a very polite euphemism for crime. It's literally a euphemism for crime. The use of legal means to commit crimes. In military science, hiyal with synonyms maqa'id, makkah, well, okay, possibly, but an adab is a technical term for stratagems of war. So the same stratagems of lying are a strategy of pursuing warfare by other means. Warfare of the mouth, lying with the tongue. Okay, and any comments, Jay, before I continue?
No, and I think this is fascinating because everything you're saying here, I have experienced face to face with Muslims. I didn't understand it. I didn't know the word for it. I saw it. I could see that other people when I did my debates, and I did over 90 debates in England alone, formal debates. These are on university campuses. These are at other institutions. It was always astounding to us how they would just say anything to win the debate. You're now telling me why this was the case. And one of my best recourses, whenever I came to do the rebuttal, I would just point this out to the crowd. I said, can you notice they've just contradicted themselves, or the person has contradicted himself in two different sentences? Or have you noticed he cannot support what he is saying? There is no authority for what he has said. Let me tell you what the authority, and that was my best recourse. And interestingly, the crowd picked it up. The Muslims didn't. The Muslims didn't pick it up. And I think because they almost see this as a divine edict, it is something that God is going to honor them for. They're not really there to even understand it or to see the implications in a Western context where people can see you've just lied, you've just completely contradicted yourself within a 5-minute period. For them, it was not matter of truth. They weren't there to convince the truth. They were there to convince the opponent.
Correct. This is divinely sanctioned gaslighting.
Okay. Wow.
So
makes sense
understand,
now.
technically it's the adab al-jadal. This is their method of debating, which utilizes Hiyal.
That's very important.
Yeah. Something I want to bring to your attention is that we are often told by people who have their own biases against Jews that Jews practice usury. Now, usury has certain rules in the Bible, and this is within the Bible, usury is made legal for Jews. Of course, this is considered to be some sort of crazy crime that's used to indict Jews in the worst possible smears by people who dislike Jews. That said, usury is also legal in Islam. Now, everyone believes it's not, but it is. It's just hidden in a certain way. It's just, there's a subterfuge designed. But the very same thing happens in Islam, but somehow this is not being called out. There's a hypocrisy here. But let's have a look at Hiyal from Wikipedia. Let's go to Wikipedia, see if it matches up with what I've shown you from these Islamic sources. Hiyal, singular, hila, okay? Mechanical device, contortion, contrivance, device, subterfuge. Legalistic trickery in Islamic jurisprudence. The main purpose of Hiyal is to avoid straightforward observance of Islamic law, to get around the Islamic law. Didn't we just see that in the previous definition? While still obeying the letter of the law. An example of Hiyal is the practice of dual purchase, to avoid the prohibition of usury by making 2 contracts of purchase and then repurchase at a higher price, similar to a modern futures contract. So this is how they get around. They have their own little legal tricks to get around every single Islamic law. Every single law can be broken using Hiyal. So if it's not okay for, say, Jews to do it, why would it be okay in Islamic law? Now, let's continue. A special subfield of Hiyal is oath trickery called ma'arid, dedicated to the formulation of ambiguous statements designed to be interpreted as an oath or a promise while leaving loopholes to avoid perjury. So understand, a substantial literature on such tricks has developed, especially in the Hanafi school. Notice in the Kitab al-Maharij fi Hiyal, Book of Evasion and Trickery, the Book of Evasion and Trickery by Muhammad Shabani in 805, this is the earliest development of the field of Hiyal. And there's even a more comprehensive treatment in another book as well. Okay, so in other words, the ways of lying in Islam was formed already in the year 805. Let's have a look. We talk about jihad bil-lisan, jihad with the mouth, jihad of the tongue. Adab al-jadal became the technical term for the method of debating, right? And they had to debate questions that were controversial between the schools of law, and then this got generally applied. It was no more a matter of finding the truth, but of convincing the opponent. Islamic debate is not about truth, it's about winning. Okay? And let's have a look. Badi. Right? In literature, Badi is the name for the innovations of the poets. Now, what is interesting is that the Ilm al-Badi is the branch of rhetorical science in Islam which deals with the beautification of literary style. It is the artifices, and artifice is defined, as we showed earlier, as something contrived, something false, something misleading, designed to mislead, of the ornamentation and the embellishment of speech. To embellish is to add details, to lie, in short. So in other words, this is a science in terms of how can we embellish everything that we say or write in Islam. How can we make it more beautiful? And the more beautiful it is, the more true it is. So everything in Islam falls under this ilm al-badi, which must be beautified using lies. And adab is another word for sunnah, right? Adab is another word for sunnah. And if you go to the dictionary for artifice and embellishment, you will not find positive connotations. And hiyal, artifice, device, expedient, stratagem, a means of evading a thing, stratagems in war. Notice the Prophet said war is deceit. So Hiyal is deceit. Muhammad preached deceit, and it's a military art. The term occurs in titles of military art as well as in their texts, as in their other literature. So Hiyal is not only, it's the art of deceit in warfare applied to Islamic life. Oath breaking for fun and profit. Nearly done with this. The first and simplest Hiyal were presumably thought out by interested parties who felt the need for them. These were the merchants, the traders, Islamic traders. But it was quite beyond them to invent and apply the more complicated forms of deceiving their customers. So they had to have recourse to specialists in religious law. The imams happily obliged. And these last did not hesitate to supply the means of lying. So a special branch of Hiyal is concerned with the evasion of obligations undertaken under oath, to break every oath, and of course to deceive your customers, to sell something to customers. And of course, when you go into the Encyclopedia of Islam, volume 2, page 184, they speak of Machiavellian tricks, Hiyal, to recruit new adherents and detach them from their religion. So in other words, to win over converts, they must use Hiyal, which is described as Machiavellian. And as you know, Machiavelli is not a good guy. So now Hiyal is described as Machiavellian tricks to recruit new adherents, to lie to new people about Islam and to detach them from their religion and to bring them into Islam. Now, of course, dawah is political propaganda, and Hiyal also is utilized in their dawah. So the former caliph is said to have commissioned disputants, right, and controversialists, the Jadaliyun, Adab al-Jadal, these controversialists, to carry on a parallel campaign by means of the pen. So in other words, these Jadaliyun were using Adab al-Jadal, this form of debate based on Hiyal, based on deception and lying, subterfuge and trickery, to carry on a campaign of dawah by the pen. This is state propaganda. I'll continue. So this practice goes back to the 9th or the 10th century, when it became entrenched and became a standard part of Islamic practice. Propaganda. Notice Dar al-Dawah, the house of dawah. Ooh, propaganda, dawah, propaganda. Propaganda, dawah. Oh, I thought it was evangelism. Looks like it's propaganda. Oh my gosh. Dawah, call, invitation, propaganda, and pretension. To pretend. Not to be sincere, but to pretend. It is entirely a secular connotation. When it says call, invitation, it is not evangelization. It is call, invitation, entirely secular, propaganda, and pretension. To pretend. Not to be honest, not to be sincere, to pretend. And it is heuristic. Yes, Jay? I'm nearly done. I'll do one more slide. But
example after example after example of this. How many times did we see IERA, Islamic Education Research Authority, which is their big dawah organization, headquartered in London? I know the leaders. I've engaged with them. I know them personally. They would have all these terrific campaigns. Jesus was a Muslim. Jesus was the best of Muslims. Life is more than just a game. These were all ways of subterfuge, of enticing people. Not really the truth. They didn't really care about that. Probably one of the best examples I can see of this is what just happened 2 years ago in that infamous interview with Hijab and Yasir Qadhi. Remember what Yasir Qadhi said about Qirat and Ahruf? And he said, listen, when we get new converts into Islam, we don't tell them about this. We just keep it away from them. They don't need to hear this. When they become intermediate, then we say, just believe, memorize, don't question. And if you take a deep dive, he said, then we will explain it to you. But we don't do this at the very beginning. See, this is exactly Hiyal. They are enticing them, promising them, and making sure they don't give them the problem areas as converts. Just the opposite of what we would do. We would start with the problem areas. We were the first. We always start as Christians. If you have a problem, ask our question. Why do you think we've been doing this on this show over and over again? If you have a problem, throw it at us. Engage with us. Just the opposite here.
Now, I want you to note that they do in the full, if you go to the Encyclopedia of Islam, links in the description, they talk of heuristic refutations. Heuristic. This word is very important. I'm going to briefly touch on this. Heuristic comes from Greek heuristikos, fond of wrangling, fond of haggling. Okay, this is someone who is not going to give something away easily. They will constantly argue with you, right? So argumentation that makes successful disputation an end in itself. So this is disputation. This is not finding truth. This is disputation. This is not logos, right? So argumentation that makes successful disputation an end in itself rather than a means of approaching truth. Such argumentation reduces philosophical inquiry to a rhetorical exercise. Heuristic argument is closely associated with the sophists. So This is heuristic. This is sophistry. This is lying on an industrial scale. And then I will end very shortly. Dawah is a call, an invitation, but it is also propaganda. Now, in most dictionaries, they would place the main meaning first, not last, but this is, well, we have to cater for little things like this within the sources that we are using that speak about Islam. Many of them are written by apologists. And also pretension, right? Now, notice the Abbasid Caliphate, the Abbasid Dawah, was propaganda for a member of the Prophet's family, and Ismaili propaganda for the Imam who alone could give mankind good guidance. So the Abbasids developed Dawah, which was propaganda, right? And let's continue. Let's look at this propaganda, right, for the theocratic empire. So the theocratic state was based on monotheism, right? And the whole organization was responsible for attracting the greatest possible number of people to this idea and for giving political power to the representatives. Get as many people as you can and give us power. And as well as propaganda for this purpose is thus called dawah. Propaganda for the purpose of attracting the greatest number of people to Islam and giving power to the leaders of Islam is called dawah. Okay, propaganda. The dawah is one of the means of founding a new empire. Dawah, strictly speaking, is propaganda.
Okay.
So, yeah, and Machiavellian, by the way, right, is Machiavellian is one of the traits in the dark triad psychological model, along with psychopathy and narcissism, right? It is a personality trait centered on manipulativeness, callousness, and indifference to morality. I'll end here. This is a much longer discussion. It would take 2 hours, but I wanted to introduce this, and I'll end here with this, Jay.
Well, once again, this is a big subject. Thanks for tackling. Thanks for introducing. I understand that you could do an awful lot more. You would like to do an awful lot more. But I wanted you to just to get this out there to help people understand what's happening around us. The word that we've always used to define this is Taqiyya. You're saying no. Hiyal is probably a better word to use because Hiyal is supported right through the reliance of the traveler. And since we need to unpack it that way, there are always different categories, sometimes in the context of war, other times in the context of commerce. Other times, I noticed in one of the cases between a husband and a wife, both can use Hiyal. Both can use to defend against their or for their position. I like the fact that you're bringing in Al-Ghazali, where he says that at times there is a case for using false statements. False speaking is better than speaking the truth in certain contexts, in the context of between two parties, you said, or in the context of war. And he's the one that also supports the idea that in the context of trying to ameliorate a difficulty between husband and wife. And interestingly, he says it's both a husband or a wife can lie. It's not just the husband. The wife can lie as well. So give him credit for that. Now, the word hiyal, though, legalistic trickery, even the definition of it, legalistic trickery, jars us. It jars me to hear that. Trickery by any context is against the gospel of Jesus Christ. We are not permitted to do this as Christians at all. Our A must be A and our nay must be nay. What we do in public, God sees us in private, and we are held accountable in public because God is watching not only what we're thinking, what our ideas. He knows exactly our intentions. Therefore, we should never, I mean, not sure we would, people do lie all the time. But this is the beauty of Christianity when context what you're saying here. There is absolutely all kinds of legalistic trickery. You get contortions or subterfuge, allowing even to break the laws if need be, or even break your oath if need be. If depending on the situation, it's almost seen as a tactic of war, especially. And you use the word harb, which means in the context of harb means in context where when they're in a non-Muslim environment, which means you're in the West. They come to the West, they're in the context of Dar al-Harbs, house of war. All of these, therefore, are applicable in the context of living in the West, where we live today. Now, are Muslims, are you, those who are watching, are you hearing this? Do not be surprised, in other words, what Lloyd is bringing out. Adab al-Dajjal is one that I've had to deal with for so many years. I didn't understand how they could get away with it, and yet they were actually being good Muslims by claiming things that they could not ever support. They didn't need to support it. They wanted to win the argument. And Adab al-Dajjal is doing just that in order to convince the opponent not to do it with truth. Sometimes they did it with volume. Sometimes they did it with sophistry. Many times they did it by using cohorts. We had a real problem in our debates having people come to the microphone because they would then just support what the person had said from the front and continue the debate, just lie after lie after lie. And after a while, we had to shut that down. It became almost untenable. So I find it fascinating in this kind of context. You don't know what you're up against. You don't know really what the Muslims saying, whether or not they are lying to you, whether they are telling the truth. And that's why it's so good, Lloyd. What you're doing is you're helping us to be prepared for just these type of events. Do not be surprised, folks. Do not be surprised if the Muslims say one thing one day, or just at 5 minutes later say something completely different, especially in the context of you, the non-Muslim. Now, you Muslims.
This is considered righteous. Allah does not record this. In fact, when we did the doctrine of commanding the right and forbidding the wrong, I didn't cover this because I wanted to cover that as part of the doctrine of lying in a full episode one day. But it does state that in the context of commanding the right and forbidding the wrong, it states that anything a Muslim says counts against him. In other words, it counts against him on the scales, and it counts as a sin against him and not for him unless he is speaking in context of commanding the right. So when they lie to beat you in a debate, they are commanding the right, and therefore every word they speak, Allah does not count that as a lie. Allah counts that as reward.
Yeah. I thought the way you ended off though with the redefinition of da'wah. You're right. I have been told, you have been told, we've all been told that da'wah is nothing more than to invite people to the faith. The real definition is propaganda. It may have come third in the list, but then look at all the definitions underneath it. It's full of propaganda. And what is propaganda? Propaganda is to win people over by any means. That's what propaganda is all about. Political parties do it all the time, and we sit there and we know that political parties are not telling the truth. They are there to make their point, regardless of whether or not they can support it. It looks like that's what dawah is. Dawah is not there to talk about truth, to win you through truth, to win you to the position of what is honest and fair and right. It's there to entice you, to impose upon you their viewpoint. Propaganda is something I've always assumed only happened in political sphere. It looks like it is the number one, or the largest, the means to get people into Islam. Folks, be aware of that. Do not walk away from this and say this is simplistic. No. If you find all these tactics that they're using, if you find them to be rather simplistic, maybe even offensive, don't be surprised. They are obliged to do this. This is a holy act for them. This is not something they've not thought it through as being a profitable act. It's not, that doesn't even come into the context. They believe if they do this, God will support them. And this also is part of working off their salvation. So terrific stuff. Eristic refutation, the disputation for the simple reason of winning the argument. Now, don't be surprised. This all makes sense now with all the years I've had disputing with Muslims, doing the Adab al-Dajjal. Now I realize what they've been up to. And boy, I wish I'd learned this 30 years ago. Thank God that we can pass it on to you. For those of you who are Muslim, who don't like what we're saying, listen, come back to us. Lloyd is going to be looking at the comments, and we will come back if we find some good comments that need to be responded to. We'll do a whole session of Q&A just to support that. Okay? Anything else you want to end off with, Lloyd, before we end this segment?
No, that's it. I just want to make clear, Allah is not Yahweh. Allah can lie. Allah rewards lying. God is Logos. God is truth.
God never lies.
Muslims always tell us we worship the same God. Ask them to recite the Bismillah and replace the name Allah with the name Yahweh. They cannot do it because Yahweh and Allah are not the same God. Ask them to slaughter an animal in the name of Yahweh, not in the name of Allah. They cannot do it. So then if Allah and that's a lie, understand many things they're telling you are lies. Even the definition of the Jahiliyyah, that's a lie. It's a very subtle lie, but it's a lie because once you're looking in the wrong direction, you're missing what they really are hiding. Understand? There are lots of, we will discuss many of these things, the subtle misdirections they've made, subtle lies, not big lies, subtle lies that have you thinking about Islam in entirely the wrong way. And we want to uncover and unpack all of these. But I need to lay some groundwork. I need to get into the history, and we'll talk about that. But understand, when they ask you, when they tell you, we worship the same God, say the Bismillah with the name of Yahweh. Slaughter an animal with the name of Yahweh. Say the Shahada with the name of Yahweh. They cannot do it because they're not the same gods.
Okay.
So those are lies. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, and listen, Muslims, do come back with us. You say that you do not lie. You say this is not Islam. You say that we're speaking the untruth. You're saying that we're lying. Did you
Technically,
notice?
in Islam, that is not a lie. When you lie for the benefit of Allah,
I would
it's not a
expect
lie.
now you to say that. We're not surprised you're saying that. Everything that Lloyd has introduced, he has supported in your text, supported quoting from your manuals. Let's see you do in kind.
Never gonna
That's
happen.
what we put out to you. That's the challenge we make. God bless you all.
Never.
Thanks so much, Lloyd, to have you. It's great on board. This is Jay and Lloyd. Over and out.
Thank you. God bless.